Hello, Rune Scholar, wherever and whenever you are. I'm the modern Erilar. I mentioned in episode 4 that Elder Futhark began to evolve, gradually but regionally, into variant futharks, this process beginning around 400 CE. Today, we'll discuss an early period in the development of runes, sometimes called the transitional period, but usually named for the medium on which the inscriptions have survived: bracteates. Bracteates are thin sheets of metal covered with designs that have been pressed into one surface so that they're visible on the other face, either using a die or a technique similar to repoussé that was common for creating horn mounts, armor fittings, and other decorative metalwork. Early bracteates may have evolved from the practice of suspending Roman solidi coins as pendants to wear around the neck as jewelry, and when found in graves, were generally worn at the throat or on the chest by skeletons with other grave goods that are typically gendered as female. Some original designs feature unintelligible script that imitates the inscriptions on Roman coins. Around a fifth of the several hundred surviving examples include runic writing, including complete futharks, which gives us the corpus of inscriptions that make up this first evolution from Elder Futhark. This particular bracteate that I'm showing you here is the Grimpan C find. The Bracteate period is characterized by new layouts of inscriptions, reassignment of the sounds of some of the runes, and the creation of 2 new runes to extend the futhark. The changes in layout can be seen in the example of the Nudam spear shaft. The runes often appear within a top and bottom border that define the boundaries of the inscription. The runes themselves also become taller and thinner in proportion, with taller staves and thinner twigs, and more uniformity to the height than we can observe in use of Elder Futhark. For example, we see full-height versions of dagas and kenas during this period, rather than the half-height versions of Elder Futhark. Pollington points out that there are surprisingly few pre-Christian inscriptions which do not show some unique grapheme or layout feature, such as inverted characters, reversed characters, half-height characters, and the like. It therefore seems likely that the use of the futhark was at all times a matter of personal preference. There also survive a few runic texts that start to show variations in the style of individual runes, almost like different fonts. On the Kragehul 1 spear shaft, the rune writer inscribed a triple stroke to build up the width of the main staves and give the runes a wider appearance. The twigs then, like you see here, appear as a single stroke, and the triangles here indicate a kind of a bind rune, so that we see characters here that indicate ha at the beginning of the second row and ga here in the middle, and so on. In episode 4, I explained that Elder Futhark inscriptions were short and simple. They deal with identity, ownership, or weapon names. You can see from the couple examples that I've presented so far that texts in the Bracteate period lengthen to multiple words and convey more complex meanings. As an additional example, on the Shaland II Bracteate from around 500 CE, we have the inscription Hariu ha haitaka, faravisa, gibu auya, and then tiwas. This would mean, I am called High Warrior, the one who is wise about journeys. I give good luck, and then 3 tiwas runes. A similar phrase, conveying luck, appears in the triple Ga bind runes of the Kragehul one spear shaft that I just talked about. That inscription reads, I am the Erilar of Ansugisil, called Uha. I give good luck. Sometime between the 4th and the 5th century CE, the sounds of some of the runes changed, and at least 2 new runes appeared in what scholars call the Anglo-Frisian extension. The name Anglo-Frisian denotes that we're talking about an area that's now spread between the Dutch coast and the eastern part of Britain. The language of Old Frisian, or runic Frisian, is very similar to Old Saxon and Old English, which may indicate a common origin, but not all of these languages shared all features. For example, just stylistically, many scholars have agreed that the Hagalaz rune, written with a double bar, is characteristic of continental and Frisian inscriptions from the 6th or beginning of the 7th centuries, respectively, where the single-barred Hagalaz was preferred in Scandinavia, and the Anglian dialect of Old English seems to have used both after 700. So while Anglo-Frisian is a useful generalization, we're still talking about a group of related languages that are more like cousins than twins. New runes evolved during this Bracteate period because the phonemes, or constituent sounds of the language in this area, evolved from Germanic or Proto-Scandinavian into runic Frisian and Old English through changes that affected mainly vowels, especially in relation to certain consonants. 3 of the several changes in the language that are relevant for the evolution of the runes are monophthongization, vowel fronting, and nasalization. In monophthongization, a sound that had been made by a combination of 2 adjacent vowel sounds within the same syllable evolves into a simpler vowel sound. For example, a diphthong, the Germanic I, becomes a monophthong, the Old English long A, or the runic Frisian A or E. So I monophthongizes into E. Inscriptions during this period use fewer vowels for the evolving sound over time. For example, for the verb faihan, to do, it evolves from the faihido of the Veteland inscription of the mid-4th century into the feihidu of the later Vespi inscription. Faihido becomes feihidu. We also see the Elder Futhark rune onsus, the A sound and usually pronounced ah, evolve through a process called vowel fronting, where a vowel evolves into a sound shaped with the tongue more towards the front of the mouth than where the tongue was held previously. Ah becomes a short ah, like in cat. In the runic Frisian language, this short A became the new default A sound. In runic Frisian inscriptions, the Elder Futhark onsus rune shape remained in use for this default short A, but it's now called ash tree. The ah sound then needed a new letter to represent where it does still occur, so a new 25th rune appears, oak, or oak tree, which has this extra stroke on the upper twig. Confusingly, this oak rune could be used for both long and short A sounds, but inscriptions on objects like the Schweindorf solidus and the Amai comb show that this rune appeared by around 600 CE. Independently of the A sounds and also around the year 600, the O sound itself was also evolving into a rounded middle vowel, more like an Ö rather than an O. The second development occurred in runic Frisian because O was becoming more common than the A when it appeared before nasalized consonants like the M, the N, or the ing sound. This process is called nasalization. Runic Frisian added a second extra stroke to the onsus rune to make the rune O's, to represent the longer older O sound. This change took place in the 5th century, certainly because it appears on the Undli Bracteate, and Odela came to represent the new default Ö sound. While this sound change appeared in both England, Frisia, and Scandinavia, this Anglo-Frisian O's rune never appeared in Scandinavia. So why did runic Frisian create new runes rather than just using Awas or Odela more extensively? This is still very unclear, but considering the only 20-odd inscriptions generally accepted to be in runic Frisian, only 17 of which are even usefully readable, scholars like David Parsons have concluded that we simply may not yet fully and clearly understand the evolution of the various vowels. It is definitely difficult to feel secure in making conclusions from so few finds. The rune Yera, which we saw in Elder Futhark as 2 chevrons, changed name in the Old English rune poem to Yar or Yor, corresponding to a G that is palatized, where the sound is made with the tongue moved closer to the hard palate. To make a G sound, you bounce your tongue off of your soft palate, whereas you make a Y sound more forward against the roof of your mouth. This change usually accompanies front vowels, so it's consistent with the vowel fronting that created the short A during the Anglo-Frisian period. The Anglo-Frisian Yera looks like this rune here, this Yor now that it's called, which is clearly a bind rune of Gebo and Ishaz. We'll see this rune recycled into a different sound in later Scandinavian inscriptions where it starts to represent a different vowel sound rather than any kind of a G sound. But in England, they used this rune, Geir, especially in manuscripts. And it's a different evolution from Yera in that they're using it for harder sounds. So they used this rune for G and this last rune here for a J sometimes in manuscripts. We've learned in this episode that the Bracteate period saw new runic layouts, longer inscriptions, sound changes, and new runes. These changes in both written and spoken language parallel other substantial social changes of the migration era as new patterns developed across Northern Europe. According to Tineke Luyenga, it may be that the very purpose of writing underwent changes, presumably caused by influences from the Latin writing world and by political and religious developments. Both runic and Latin literacy were increasing during the 7th and 8th centuries, and this Bracteate period ended sometime between 650 and 700. Eventually, the English and Frisian languages developed in different ways. Frisians took on Scandinavian runes from the younger Futhark, and this evolution continues specifically in England into a uniquely Anglo-Saxon language and rune row. We'll discuss the Anglo-Saxon Futhark in episode 6. Thank you for reading the runes with me, the Modern Erilar.